If you can believe it,
No.
we actually have rain and flooding rain as we head over the next couple of days as well. The ground is really saturated in a lot of places, not everywhere, but in general, we do have a lot of saturated grounds. Listen, let's just say we are not in drought in these areas. We might be a little behind on some rainfall, but we are certainly not in drought. And anywhere from Louisiana up towards Missouri, some places are 6 inches above average for the year on rainfall. So keep that in mind that you have saturated grounds, more moisture in place, and several rounds of rain coming on through. Look at this big swath of 3 to 5 inches through Saturday. But remember, we're getting rain here today. So the fact that it's a multi-day event is certainly problematic. And we are going to see a lot of runoff here with these showers. So right now this morning, it's down into Tennessee, northern Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. Then this, which we talked about already, coming through that could cause severe weather. And then we have our Thursday look right over these same areas. So it is day after day after day. And by the way, Friday, still raining. So we are going to see essentially 3 days of rain over these same areas, especially over the Ohio River Valley, into the Mississippi River Valley tomorrow through Friday morning. And we will see, Jim was mentioning the severe weather threat with this, but don't forget, flooding is a form of severe weather, and it's the biggest killer when you're talking about all the different severe weather. You get so many people that get overwhelmed by that flooding. So there is a good chance that Friday into Saturday, especially Jordan, that we could see some flooding from Ohio down to Arkansas.
Well, I know
Actually here, we're working our way through the first full week. But before we look ahead at what to expect, let's look back at the winter that wasn't for the eastern half of the country. Our temperatures were well above average in the South, the Midwest, and the Northeast. In fact, New York City had its second warmest winter on record. And with that came a lot more rain than snow. And that was really the case for majority of the cities in the Northeast. And many have notable snow deficits. From D.C. to Boston, we are down anywhere from 1 to nearly 3 feet, while Syracuse has one of the biggest deficits of over 4.5 feet. Now to the west, where it most definitely has been winter, and we are overwhelmed with snow. In some parts of the Sierra, the snowpack is up to 277% of average, and we'll be adding more to that in the coming weeks. Now, of course, all the snow and the rain we've seen here, too, has been disruptive and destructive, but there have been some benefits. Look at the drought monitor on December 6th. We're going to play it forward and get to present day. While we do, I want you to know that water restrictions have been lifted for millions, reservoirs are filled above their typical winter levels, and the drought has been cut dramatically. Less than half of California is now in a drought. How about the Midwest? What have we been dealing with? Well, we've had a mixed bag this winter. We've had double-digit deficits in Chicago and Omaha, while spots north of there are inching towards records. And all of this snow is actually one of the reasons that the flood risk is above normal for the Mississippi River from the Twin Cities downstream near St. Louis. Moderate to major flooding is possible, and flood levels could be the worst we've seen in over 20 years from parts of Minnesota to Iowa. Now, it was just last fall that we had below average rainfall and caused dozens of river gauges across the Mississippi River watershed to reach record lows. And one of the busiest cargo waterways in the country was backed up by thousands of barges that the river just couldn't handle because it shrunk to levels that hadn't been seen in a decade. So what is it looking like as we head over the next 3 months? Well, we are going to stay wet here around the Great Lakes, and we do have drier conditions for some of us in the west. And temperatures, by the way, look like they will continue to stay above average for majority of the country. And it's what we've seen all winter, all this super warm air, and it doesn't look like we'll see any changes. The west will be a little bit on the cooler side, but notice the heat anywhere from Texas to Florida, all the way up actually into Maine. We'll be right back. We have yet another threat on top of everything that Jim just talked about, and that is the flood threat. There are some places in Louisiana up towards Missouri where we are 6 inches above average on rainfall, and we are going to get more because this moisture is going to keep flowing northbound, not only today, into tomorrow, but into our Friday. So it's several rounds of rain and really over a lot of the same areas. Look at this boundary that just kind of hangs out. See how it's stalled? It's a stalled out front. You can tell that by the red and the blue and how they're alternating. That's an indication of a stalled front. So it doesn't move. That's a lifting mechanism. And that means you're going to get rain right over the same areas. So all the way through Saturday afternoon, another 3 to 5 inches on saturated grounds. Look, not everyone is 6 inches above average. A couple of us might be a little bit below average here and there by 1 to 2 inches. But it's not like we're in a drought and we've seen a lot of rain in these places and we're going to get more. Here's the batch of rain that we're following this morning into Tennessee. As you can see, that kind of falls apart as we head into the evening hours, and then we refocus back into the Midwest, and then you see more energy spin up. So the thing is in the atmosphere right now, there's a bunch of pieces of energy. So when one starts to fade, another one's right behind it. And that's one of the reasons that we continue to stay active. Look at this, Thursday into our Friday, and this will be all warm, moist air. So that means that we can see drenching rain not only tomorrow into Friday morning, but as we head into the weekend as well. It takes a while for this to finally clear out. It's not going to be until Saturday when the thing really gets moving, and we could see that flooding rain here along the Ohio River all the way down to the Mississippi River. But Jordan, hey, look at that, clearing out beautifully Saturday, though Sunday, another pop of energy wants to return.
Hey,
I remember one time I blew my nose and like some black coloring grossness came out from all the gunk. Anyhow, ahead on this midweek.
Enjoy your breakfast, everybody.
Listen, you got to turn into pattern at noon, Monday through Friday, right here on the web. Officially here, we're working our way through the first full week, but before we look ahead at what to expect, let's look back at the winter that wasn't for the eastern half of the country. Our temperatures were well above average in the South, the Midwest, and the Northeast. In fact, New York City had its second warmest winter on record, and with that came a lot more rain than snow. And that was the case really for majority of the cities in the Northeast, and many have notable snow deficits. From D.C. to Boston, we're anywhere from 1 to nearly 3 feet below average, while Syracuse has one of the biggest deficits of over 4.5 feet. Now to the west, the complete opposite. It has most definitely been winter here, and we are overwhelmed with the snow. In the Sierra, we are seeing snowpack that is up to 277% of average, and we'll be adding more to this in the coming weeks. Now, all the snow and all the rain we've seen here, too, has been disruptive and destructive, but there have been some benefits. Let's look back at December 6th at our drought monitor. Now, we're going to play this out to bring it up into modern time here, and as we do, know that water restrictions have been lifted for millions, reservoirs are filled above their typical winter levels, and the drought has been cut dramatically. Look at the day. Less than half of California is now in a drought. Let's go to the Midwest and see what we've been dealing with. We've had a bit of a mixed bag here for our winter. We've had double-digit deficits from Chicago all the way down into Omaha, while spots north of there are inching towards records. And it's all of this snow that is one of the reasons that the flood risk is above normal for the Mississippi River from the Twin Cities downstream to near St. Louis. Moderate to major flooding is possible, and flood levels could be the worst we've seen in over 20 years from parts of Minnesota to Iowa. And remember, it was just last fall that below average rainfall caused dozens of river gauges across the Mississippi watershed to reach record lows. This, of course, is one of the busiest waterways in the country. It was backed up by thousands of barges as the Mississippi River shrunk to levels that hadn't been seen in a decade. Let's look forward now for our spring outlook. Over the next 3 months, we are going to stay wet here around the Great Lakes. We'll get a little bit drier in the west. And when it comes to temperatures, it's looking like majority of the country will be staying above average. So, Jim, it seems like we've been hot and we will continue to be so.
Steph, I think one of the keys to that map right there is, if it verifies, the fact that we're below average temperatures both where we have the biggest snowpack in the west and the upper Midwest, right? Yeah,
that's exactly true. That's a very good point, Jim, because obviously when you have the snow on the ground, it acts like a refrigerator or freezer. It keeps everything colder.
Right. You don't want it to melt too fast. Great.